At my sister's wedding, I was given a waitress uniform instead of a bridesmaid dress. Her fiancé smirked and said, "You're more useful this way." I served champagne all night until I whispered one sentence in his ear. He dropped the glass and staggered back. I still remember the way Julian's face changed. It was like I flipped a switch in his brain and short-circuited everything behind his smug eyes. One sentence. That's all it took. One quiet truth, whispered just as he tilted his glass back. His fingers froze. The stem slipped between them. The crystal shattered at his feet like glass bones. He didn't say a word. Just stared at me pale, like I'd dragged something from the bottom of a grave and held it up to his face. Up until that moment, I had played my role. The obedient sister, the quiet helper, the one willing to swallow pride so my sister could have her perfect day. Even after they handed me a waitress uniform instead of the bridesmaid dress I was promised. Even when I stood in heels for 7 hours serving people who looked through me like I wasn't even there. But something in me broke that night. I wasn't just tired. I was done. I didn't want to ruin her wedding. I didn't come to destroy anything. I just wanted the truth to matter again. And when it didn't, when my sister stood by and let me be humiliated in front of 200 guests, something else took over. Something cold and calm. And surgery. So when Julian leaned close to taunt me one last time, I leaned closer, smiled, and whispered it. And now I can't forget the look in his eyes. He knew his world had changed, and there was no putting it back together. The whole thing happened at the Biltmore estate in Asheville. An actual palace tucked into the Blue Ridge Mountains. Old-world grandeur, antique staircases, rooms that looked like movie sets. It had rained that morning, but by the afternoon, the sky cleared like it was giving Hazel a personal blessing from the weather gods. Everything was wrapped in soft gold sunlight. I arrived early because Hazel had asked me to help finalize a few last-minute details. I'd been doing that for months, calling vendors, driving to the venue, even hand-labeling the seating chart cards when the printer missed a deadline. She always said she was grateful that I had such a gift for organizing. I guess that's what made the switch so brutal. When I got to the service entrance, one of Julian's groomsmen directed me to the side building near the catering area. I assumed it was a mistake, maybe a miscommunication. I was holding my garment bag with the rose gold dress Hazel had picked months ago. I even had a copy of the itinerary she'd sent me last week. But instead of being ushered into the bridal suite, I was handed a uniform. Black slacks, white button-down shirt, black vest, no explanation, no apology, just handed a hanger like I was one of the staff. "I think you're confused," I said, holding up the dress bag. "I'm the bride's sister." The woman managing the event looked up from her clipboard and offered a tight smile. "Julian said you'd be assisting with service tonight." "Assisting?" "He said you'd be more comfortable helping out than standing up." That's when I started to feel the cold settle in my chest. I asked to see Hazel. The coordinator's smile didn't change, but her tone sharpened. "The bride is with her stylists, no interruptions." I found her myself, upstairs, in one of the gilded dressing rooms that looked like it belonged in Versailles. She was sipping champagne, laughing with her bridesmaids, all perfectly polished in the same shade of dress she'd told me was mine too. She turned when she saw me. Her eyes dropped to the uniform in my hands. I was still holding it like a question. "Oh, Celeste," she said, blinking fast like she hadn't expected to see me yet. "I was going to tell you. I meant to." I waited. "It's just, Julian thought we were getting too crowded up there, and we were short on help for the reception. You're always the calm one, the reliable one. You said I was your bridesmaid." I just thought, this was a better fit. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I looked around the room. The other women were quiet, watching us like a scene from a play. No one offered to stand or say anything. I realized in that moment that this had been decided long before I arrived. "Julian said I'd be more useful this way," I said flatly. Hazel didn't deny it. And that was that. I changed in the staff room, slid the hanger of my dress under a bench, and pulled on the uniform, mechanical, numb. I pinned my hair back, pulled on the black flats I kept in my car, just in case, and walked into the reception hall as a member of the wait staff. No one noticed me, not really. Maybe a few double takes from distant relatives. One of Julian's aunts gave me a sympathetic look during cocktail hour, but didn't say anything. I poured champagne. I refilled the water. I passed out hors d'oeuvres on polished silver trays while my sister posed for her perfect pictures across the lawn. Julian made sure to brush past me during the reception. "You're doing a great job," he murmured, smug. Never seen anyone hold a tray with such determination. I didn't answer. I didn't even look at him. He leaned closer. "You know, Hazel said you might make this all about you, but I knew you'd fall in line. You always do." I tightened my grip on the tray until my knuckles ached. I think what hurt the most was that my sister hadn't come to check on me, not even once, not even to ask if I was okay. After everything I had done for her, after all the late-night planning calls, the tears she cried in my kitchen when she thought Julian was pulling away months earlier, I was the one who calmed her down, who talked her out of canceling the engagement, who told her, "If you love him, fight for it." Now she stood at the top of a spiral staircase, twirling in front of guests like she didn't know me, and I let it happen. By the time dinner started, I was a machine. I floated between tables, clearing plates, smiling, ignoring the occasional confused glances from extended family members who wondered why the bride's sister was serving their salmon. Then the band started, and the first dance happened, and then the toasts, and I kept pouring champagne. Julian came around again, now slightly buzzed, holding court with his groomsmen near the sidebar. When he saw me, he motioned me over with 2 fingers like I was some kind of pet. I approached with the bottle. "You clean up nicely," he said. "Maybe you missed your calling." I forced a smile. "Top off," he held out his glass, still smirking. "You've always been good with your hands. Shame it doesn't translate anywhere else." That's when I leaned in. The tray was steady in one hand, the bottle angled just right. I could smell the cologne on his collar, expensive, sharp, too much. And I whispered it, just a single sentence. It was barely louder than the pop of another bottle opening nearby. But it reached him like a bullet. The smirk died before I finished speaking. He froze. The champagne never made it to his glass. The stem slipped between his fingers. The flute hit the marble floor and shattered. And Julian staggered back like he'd just been punched in the gut. People turned, heads swiveled. His friends asked if he was okay, but his eyes were still locked on mine. He knew I knew. And for the first time that night, I felt like I was standing again. He didn't say anything at first. He couldn't. He just stood there, mouth slightly parted, the color draining from his face so fast it made his temples look bruised under the soft amber lighting. The music kept playing, a gentle, jazzy version of At Last, and people laughed and clinked glasses like nothing had happened. But Julian was frozen. I didn't move. I didn't need to. My part was done, at least for that moment. I turned and walked away, slowly, not bothering to collect the shards of his dropped ego from the floor. One of the staff scurried over with a towel and a dustpan, and I slipped back into the river of servers gliding between tables like nothing had happened. But I could feel him watching me. All night. Like he expected me to say more. Like he was trying to figure out how much I knew, how much I'd share. What I'd whispered had cracked something in him, not just fear but exposure. He knew I had proof, and that's what shook him. I didn't rush to tell anyone. That wasn't the point. My sister's guests kept dancing and drinking. They didn't see the frayed thread unraveling behind the wine and laughter. But Hazel did. Eventually, she noticed. It was during the cake cutting. The photographer had everyone gathered. Hazel held Julian's hand as they sliced into the delicate 3-tier almond cake with sugared violets. They smiled. They fed each other bites. The crowd cheered. Then Julian's hand slipped from hers, just a twitch. He looked to the side, to where I was standing near the back of the room, pouring another round of champagne for a group of middle-aged couples talking about property taxes and golf. Hazel followed his gaze, and for the first time I saw it register. She looked at me, then at Julian. Something about his stiff posture, the forced smile, the way his hand trembled just slightly when he picked up his champagne, it hit her. I saw her brows pull together. And just like that, she was no longer the blushing bride. She was the girl I used to share a bunk bed with, the one who could read a whole room in 5 seconds. The one who used to cover for me in school because she could smell a lie before it was spoken. She walked over to him, still smiling at guests, but I watched her whisper something in his ear. His response was quick, almost too quick. He kissed her cheek and laughed as if she'd just said something flirty. She played along, but her eyes were hard now. Cold. Something in her had clicked. She didn't know what, but she knew something had shifted. About 15 minutes later, I was carrying a fresh tray of flutes toward the side room where some guests were taking a break from the dance floor. Julian was there, pretending to be casual, holding court again with two of his groomsmen. But his eyes darted every few seconds. Always back toward the main hall. Always back toward Hazel. He saw me coming and straightened. "Need something?" I asked. My voice was flat, neutral. He glanced at the other two men, then shook his head. "We're fine." I turned to walk away, but he stepped forward. "Wait." I stopped. He hesitated. "What do you want?" The question hung between us like a stale breath. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said. He glanced back at his friends, then lowered his voice. "You want money. Or are you just trying to destroy her day?" That made me laugh, quiet but real. "You destroyed her day," I said, barely above a whisper. "I just peeled back the curtain." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "I can explain," he muttered, but his voice had no weight behind it. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, and what I know." He didn't respond. I stepped a little closer, letting the tray of glasses balance against my hip. "It's not just cheating, it's how long it's been going on, it's the names I could name, the screenshots I could show." Julian's face went taut. "You were sloppy," I continued, "and arrogant. Bad combination." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Whatever defense he was trying to summon, it died before it reached his lips. I didn't need to press it. The point had been made. He thought he'd humiliated me. He thought he'd won. But now he was stuck dancing on the edge of a very sharp knife, one that could fall at any moment. The reception dragged on. Time warped in that odd way weddings always do, fast and slow, bright and surreal. I moved like a ghost, silent and efficient. No one paid much attention, but every so often I caught Hazel glancing in my direction, then back to Julian, like her brain was quietly assembling puzzle pieces behind her smile. I watched her more closely now. She wasn't giddy anymore. Her movements were precise. Her voice is a little tighter. She still thanked guests and posed for photos, but something had hardened in her. She walked past me on her way to the powder room. Our eyes met for half a second. She didn't say anything, but she didn't have to. She knew something had happened, and she would find out what. The real shift came during the father-daughter dance. Julian stepped away mid-song to take a phone call. He thought no one would notice, but Hazel did. So did I. He slipped into one of the side hallways, where the light was dimmer, quieter. I followed silently. Not because I wanted to listen in, I didn't care what excuse he was fabricating, but because I needed to know how deep this rabbit hole went. I only caught a few words. "Yeah, I know it's not ideal. Just one night and then we'll figure it out. She doesn't know, okay? Just keep your mouth shut for now." I stepped back before he saw me. I returned to the main room and resumed pouring drinks like nothing had happened. But now I know. It wasn't just infidelity. It was ongoing. He wasn't remorseful. He was still planning something. And Hazel. Hazel was about to become collateral damage unless someone stopped it. Julian returned from his hushed hallway phone call, looking like a man who just shoved a body in the trunk and prayed it wouldn't start leaking. He walked back into the reception like nothing had happened. But the mask he wore earlier in the evening, that sleek confidence, the effortless charm, was beginning to crack. I could see it in the way his jaw clenched when Hazel laughed too long with a friend, or the way his hands fidgeted near his pockets. He was spiraling. And the funny thing was, I didn't have to do anything else. All I'd done was whisper one sentence. But it was what he didn't know that unraveled him. He didn't know exactly what I had. He didn't know who else I might have told. He didn't know if I was bluffing or worse, preparing something bigger. And that uncertainty, that not knowing, it was exquisite. Hazel's smile never quite returned after the dance. She was polite, composed, the way you are when something inside you is folding in on itself and you're trying to keep the corners sharp. She didn't talk to Julian much after the cake. And when the photographer asked for a few more romantic shots by the gardens, she politely declined and walked off with our cousin Sari instead. I waited until the party was winding down. Guests had started to leave. The music softened, the speeches were over, and the open bar was nearly dry. That was when I knew it was time. Hazel had retreated into the bridal dressing room, a large, elegant suite overlooking the courtyard. I knocked once and stepped inside. She was sitting at the vanity, still in her gown, but barefoot now, heels discarded on the floor. Her hair had started to fall from its intricate updo. She looked at me through the mirror. "Are you going to tell me what happened?" No anger. No theatrics, just weariness like she already knew. I closed the door behind me and sat in the chair opposite her. I wasn't going to, I said. I thought it's your day. You deserve one good memory. She turned to face me, folding her hands in her lap. But, I pulled out my phone, opened the folder I'd compiled, screenshots, voicemails, even a few texts between Julian and a woman named Tara, one of his coworkers, where they talked about getting through the wedding before figuring things out. I didn't go looking for this, I said quietly. It came to me. Months ago, I wanted to tell you, but you were in too deep. Hazel took the phone, swiped slowly. No tears, just silence. Then finally, Tara, I nodded. There were others too, but she's my current favorite. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then set the phone down carefully, as though even her rage was being measured now. She leaned back in the chair and let out a long, quiet breath. I thought something was off, she said, but I kept pushing it down. I didn't want to be the woman who calls off her wedding days before it happens. I thought, maybe it will get better after today. I reached out and touched her hand. It's not your fault, she smiled weakly. No, but I still chose him. I didn't say anything. She didn't need me to. The truth was already burning through her, not just about Julian, but about everything else. About the compromises, the isolation, the subtle ways he made her feel small when no one was looking. She looked at me again. Did you know he asked the coordinator to switch my dress out? I blinked. What? She nodded. He thought the neckline was too low, said it was drawing attention. So he had them tailor a new one and told me it was just a better fit for the venue. I stared at her, shocked. Hazel, I let him do it, she said. Just like I let him decide where we'd live, who we'd invite. I gave him every inch he asked for. And then her voice dropped. Until tonight. She stood, smoothed down the front of her dress, and looked at me with something new in her eyes, not anger. No regret, clarity. I need your help, she said. The next morning, as the newlyweds were scheduled to meet guests for a farewell brunch at the same estate, Julian woke to a note on his pillow. It wasn't long, just a few lines. Julian, I know everything. Please don't come to brunch. I'll be returning to Charlotte alone. Consider the marriage annulled before it begins. And before you ask, yes, everyone will know. You may keep the suit. You always did love dressing for roles. She didn't need fireworks or shouting matches. She didn't throw his things out or confront him in front of guests. She just quietly pulled the rug from under him. Hazel didn't just leave Julian. She left the version of herself she had become with him. Over the following weeks, she moved back into a small apartment in Asheville. She reconnected with old friends. She started volunteering at a local legal aid clinic. And slowly, she became the Hazel I remembered, only wiser. Sharper, free. As for Julian, well, the truth came out. Hazel sent the screenshots to a few key people, his family, her bridal party, and most importantly, his boss. Because corporate real estate in Charlotte is a small world, and Julian had a habit of mixing business with pleasure. Let's just say, his reputation didn't survive the fall. I didn't see him again, not in person, but one of his former colleagues emailed me a month later, a simple note thanking me for saving Hazel's life before she had to live it like that. Sometimes, revenge isn't loud. It doesn't always mean screaming or slamming doors. Sometimes, the best revenge is quiet power, holding your head high while someone else's lies collapse under their own weight. It's choosing dignity over spectacle. And it's understanding that protecting someone you love, even when they've hurt you, doesn't mean staying silent. It means giving them the truth and letting them decide what kind of person they want to be when the mirror finally clears.